Greetings, everyone. Bula, namaste, and namaskaram. It is indeed a great pleasure to be part of this conference. And myself, together with my co-presenter Anshu, we will be presenting on this topic, the impact of migrant women and girls, a gender perspective. As we all are aware that our ancestors had played a major role in succession though they did encounter many challenges, struggles, and mishaps in their life during the indentured era. Till today, the memories of our great great grandparents are alive through some of the Fijian writers like Professor Satindra Nandan, Professor Subramani, and some other writers. Women play an important role in the lives of many people and also the economy and to the country. Thus, they are the victims of abuse, rape, oppression, and domestic violence, not only during the indenture system, but also till date. The aim of this presentation is to discuss the impact of migration in the lives of women during indenture system and at present, how women were treated during the indenture system and at present. Girmit was the pronunciation of the English language for the word agreement. This agreement specified the workers' length of stay in foreign parts and the conditions attached to their return to the British Raj. Girmitia is how they came. Indentured immigration began in the 19th century to meet the shortage of labor supply caused by the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1833. According to Dr. Nandan, the Girmit experience has many lasting legacies and lessons. The indentured laborers came in the sailing ships with little knowledge of Fiji. They crossed the Kalapani, and in those dark waters, they lost many mates in the ship and brought suppressive scriptures of where they were going. Between 1879 and 1916, some 60,537 Indians arrived in Fiji as the indentured laborers. Approximately 75% boarded their ship in Calcutta and the rest in Madras. Among the migrants from Calcutta, there were 85.3% Hindus, 14.6% Muslims, and 0.1% Christians. Indigenous Fijians were prohibited from commercial employment, and the source of labor were scarce in other Pacific islands. So Gordon, he actually went to India, and he knew that India was a supplier of labor to sugar colonies. Purpose of indenture. One major reason for the indenture system was to cater for labor needs of the British Empire, especially of plantation agriculture. Mostly, or especially men, those who were brought to work on sugarcane plantation were very young. They did not actually wanted old people because young people were energetic. So they thought of bringing young men, while the reasons for women migration one needs to consider is gender. Migrant women and girls are uniquely and disproportionately affected by gender-based discrimination, abuse, and violence. Migrants are constantly entering and leaving those battered societies, which explains why gender relations and issues are constantly changing. International human rights framework governing gender and migration states that all human beings are entitled to all human rights, especially for women. There is no hierarchy of human rights, as all rights are universal, inalienable, indivisible, interdependent, and of equal importance. Giving women greater economic empowerment means enabling women to increase their right to economic resources and their control over meaningful decisions. And that benefit themselves, their household, and their communities. These include the right to control their own time, their income, and access to participation in existing markets equally. However, the result was an option to migration to urban centers for employment, making remittances to an integral part of the rural economy in the Indo-India. Men were living as well as women. It was from this uprooted mess of humanity on the move that the Indenture migrants came. Some definitely were the victims of deceitful recruiting practices by the Arkatis, and these were the people who actually manipulated and uh, influenced the other people. And the other people, meaning the people from India, and they actually painted a different picture for them as Fiji was near and they would be able to earn a lot. But others were in search. Many did not imagine a permanent separation, hoping to return one day. But time passed, memories of India faded, and the day of decision never came. However, migrant women and girls are uniquely and disproportionately affected in many ways. So these experiences and sufferings of our ancestors has been kept alive by some of our Fijian writers like Satyendra Nandan, Dr. Brejlal, Joginder Singh Kanwal, and Professor Subramani, and a few other writers. The challenges encountered, they were given the names as coolies. Coolies were actually given the names to dogs, and they actually were regarded as dogs. However, women bore the brunt of racism as well as sexism. Uh, Women were also held accountable for all the problems of indenture. They had to work hard on sugar plantation, return to work on plantation soon after giving birth. They suffered from the prevalence of debilitating infectious diseases such as hookworm, diarrhea, dysentery, and anemia, which took the life of many. Another major challenge encountered was suicide. To add on, some women still work on farms in Fiji, not only sugarcane but vegetable farms, and at the same time, they perform all the household chores without any support from their. It is indeed very clear that the treatment of women during indenture at present is the same. Now, I would like to welcome my co-presenter Anshu to elaborate more on the impacts of migration on migrant women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashika. Indeed, our indentured women, they actually faced a lot of sufferings. They actually went through a lot of sufferings. Okay, so to continue from there, indentured women, especially those in Fiji, unwittingly played a very large part in the movement to abolish the indenture system. The Indian public had for a long time been aware of the sorry plight of the Indian laborers overseas, but it was the news of the molestation and abuse of Indian women on the plantations that outraged most of them. They had a lot of working conditions in the sugarcane fields, and not only in the sugarcane fields, but there were other places as well. Their daily routine began at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. with preparation for work, and frequently one returned to one's room in the afternoon, more often late than early. Work was hard and energy was sapped not only by such toil but also through debilitating illnesses, poor and insufficient food, and inadequate sanitation. Added to precarious social relations, these contributed to depression and conflict. They reflect experiences which were recapitulated years after the events had occurred. And while the details memory might have played some tricks, generally their accounts are supported by other records. To further highlight on, not only the women had to work on the sugarcane field, but also had to cook for the family, look after the children, get the barrack organized, even though they were sick and tired. Moving on, The women suffered with severe brutality and abuse by their sardars. They were beaten, in fact, they were whipped for not doing the given task in an allocated period of time, or they were tortured for not being frisky. Even after the delivery, women had to work in the sugarcane fields without taking any consideration about their health. No maternity leave was provided. They were sexually molested by their sardars, and if approvals were not provided, they were abused. They were tortured. This resulted in the other major problem afflicting the Indian endangered population, which was suicide. Suicide was not a Suicide was not a major killer, but because of its tragic and sensational nature, violent and unnatural, attracted public attention. And Fiji Indians at the turn of the 20th century had the highest suicide rate among all Indian labor importing colonies. For this tragedy, too, women bore the major blame. Sexual jealousy was the catch-all phrase used to explain the cause of death. Proportionately, more women took their own lives. There was sexual disparity in the recruited population, with a stipulated 40 women migrating to every 100 men. The ratio had been in place since the 1870s and was invariably met in Fiji's case. But while the recruitment of some women alleviated the disparity somewhat, it did not solve it. Competition for women was an inescapable fact of life on the plantations. Officials alleged that women ruthlessly exploited their scarce value. They reportedly attached themselves to one man, got rewards in jewelry and other valuable items, moved on to another man, and finally, they took their own lives, most commonly by hanging. No, some women trafficked in sex, but suicide had other causes besides sexual jealousy. The cultural prejudice of the dominant towards the minority communities, the collapse of the integrative institutions of society, such as family, kinship, and community, the violence, the relentless pace of work, and the sense of despair and hopelessness that followed the realization that the break with India was permanent and that there would be no return. And most of the suicides occurred within a relatively short time following the immigrants' arrival in the colony. The female Indian indentured servants in Suriname used the contract system more than men to increase their social status and to emancipate themselves from the ranked social system in India. Indentured Indian women controlled their social and sexual lives, and it was uncommon either for a woman to leave a man with whom she was living for another, then for a third, and perhaps for a fourth, and sometimes return to one of those whom she had previously deserted. In addition, the collapse of culture and custom among the immigrants, the filthy living conditions in the lines, had the morals of the poultry yard. The Hindu woman in this country is like an aimless vessel with its mast broken, being whirled down the rapids of a great river without any controlling hand. She passes from one man to another and has lost even the sense of shame in doing so. This portrayal was as harsh as it was unfair. But truth, in the objective sense, was not a part of the purpose. If women had to be demonized to arouse the conscience of India, then that price had to be paid by the victims. This is one of the saddest legacies of the anti-indenture struggle in Fiji and elsewhere. Once again, the treatment of women, especially their sexual exploitation by European overseers and Indian sardars, most commonly known as foremen, too played a critical role in awakening the Indian conscience towards the atrocities committed in Fiji and other sugar colonies. Indians as victims is a dominant theme in the narrative, but only that portion of the manuscript that detailed the horrors of the indenture experience and which could thus aid the anti-indenture crusade was published. The portion that concerned the social and cultural life of the Indian community in Fiji remained unpublished. For instance, in the novel written by Jogendra Singh Kanwal, The Morning, or the Hindi version, which is named as Savera, Kanwal depicts the struggles of women during the indenture system through the female character Jamuna. During the indenture system, she was abused and she tried to escape many times. And finally, she decided to give up her life by jumping into the river, whereby she was saved by the main character Amar Singh. When we look at the scenarios in our country, through many parts of the country, we also experience, as women, we also experience the same thing. Many a times we find out, we come over the media that girls are being raped, girls are not being given freedom, girls and women cannot move freely, they have to be accompanied by an adult to safeguard them. So still women are not safe, they are still struggling, they are still going under the abusive treatment. Women are beaten, they are beaten by their partners, at times by the opposite gender, even though that particular gender is not related, that particular person is not related to the woman, but they go under this stressful life, stressful scenarios. Moreover, women's privacy was not paramount. While Gilmit, the laborers found themselves housed in a room 10 feet by 7 feet, and after 1908, it was 10 feet by 12 feet in a barrack of 16 rooms, 8 on each side. Sometimes a room either 3 single persons or a couple with not more than 2 children. The rooms had doors but not windows, and sometimes no floors. The partitions did not reach the ceiling. There was instead a wire netting link for ventilation. The room was a storehouse, kitchen, a living room, and bedroom. It was the place where a laborer spent his life when not outdoors. One's privacy was in inverse proportion to one's neighbor's curiosity. Sometimes married couples lived in rooms adjacent to single men. Women were not privileged of having sexual privacy and self-privacy. In conclusion, migrant women comprise half of the total migrant population in the world and provides important social and economic contributions to their countries of origin and destination. For many women and girls, migration provides opportunities for their economic and social development. Migration experiences can contribute to the empowerment of women and girls by increasing their self-confidence, autonomy, and control over their lives. Their exposure to different gender norms may contribute to the achievement of gender equality in their societies of origin. However, circumstances such as discriminatory social and cultural norms and policies have contributed to the specific vulnerabilities of migrant women and girls. Many are disproportionately affected by gender-based discrimination, abuse, and violations of their rights during migration. Thank you all for listening. And now you are all welcome to provide your opinion and critiques. May Mata Rani bless you all. Thank you.